Ever since my family moved into our current house, my room has always been off. Always the opposite temperature from the rest of the house. Things going missing and reappearing in places I'm absolutely sure I would never put them. Just to name a few. When I was 15, I was up at around 11 p.m. since I couldn't just fall asleep, and I think I saw someone or something standing by my closet closed door. Now, I didn't feel scared. If anything, it was oddly comforting, as if I had nothing to worry about. I didn't say anything to my parents because, as a teenager, do you really think that they believed me if I said there was something going on in there? Of course not. A few months of sporadically seeing the figure during the night, she disappeared, and my room was sort of stabilizing in temperature, and I can remember explicitly that I felt so relieved in the winter when my room was actually warm and not freezing cold, as it had been for the past year or so. Then, when I turned 17, my room's temperature went wonky again for a few days, and then I saw the figure again, still by my closet door even after I had moved some stuff around my room. It was also 11 again, as had happened the other times I saw the figure, and I again felt the same peace that I'd felt the other times. However, this time, it only stayed for 1 week, of which all 7 days she was there in front of my closet door. I had almost felt a little upset, thinking that maybe I'd done something to bother the figure, but eventually, thinking about my future career, dismissed what had occurred from my mind until today. Now, I turned 18 recently, and the happenings that had occurred in the past just came back to me without reason, and I commented about this to my friend, and they noticed how weirded out and uncomfortable I was with the thought of something being in my room, and she suggested that I use the TikTok filters that witches on the app that have been using to detect their deities, or what they worship, and though I thought it was most likely just a glitch that could occur, but there's always the chance it could actually be true, I still did it because, again, I wasn't comfortable not knowing. So I got the app and I quickly tested the filters before I started going around my room, not seeing anything in the living room or kitchen, which was kind of comforting, but I still had to go test my room. I enter my room and turn on the filter, starting to look at the furthest area of the room and seeing nothing. Scanning around, and as soon as I turned the phone to the closet, the filter quickly worked, showing something moving in front of the door. I thought to myself, no, it must be the movement from the phone that made something appear to be there. So I switched filters and switched back with very little movement of the phone, and there was still something there. Now, normally I wouldn't believe that an app meant for entertainment purposes can show something paranormal in nature, but my wallet and textbook were on my higher shelf that I never move stuff on or off, and underneath my desk respectively. So, is there a possibility that my room is haunted? So this happened when I was a kid, December 1980. I was at a neighbour's apartment with my sister. I remember we were watching the Sugar Ray Leonard, Robert Duran no mass fight. I'm guessing it must have been a rebroadcast of the fight, because the fight actually happened on November 25th, 1980, and we were watching it in December. There were three of us in the room, me, 10 years old, my younger sister who was 8 years old, and our neighbour. I think she was a couple of years older than me. Our moms were hanging out on my apartment 2 doors down. So we're sitting on the couch, which faces the front window, TV is to our right. There's a Christmas tree in front of the window, probably 10 feet from the couch. I remember looking at the Christmas tree and seeing an ornament jiggle. I asked the girls if they saw it, and they said no. I said an ornament moved, but they didn't believe me. So I got up and walked to the tree. As I was walking over, I saw the ornament jiggle again. When I was about 2 feet from it, the ornament popped off the tree and hit me square in the chest and fell to the ground. Funny thing was that I wasn't scared. I asked the girls if they saw that. Of course, they didn't. They were directly behind me. They didn't believe me either. I remember it like it was yesterday. When I was younger, I grew up in a house built in 1889. One confirmed suicide took place, and it was a hanging in the basement. On this particular day, I heard what I assume was a gunshot for an unconfirmed suicide. I was soaking in the bathtub when I heard the loud bang. My left ear, the ear facing the door, rang so hard I quickly grabbed the side of my head with extreme pain. I then smelled the powder blast and sulfur mix as if it were a firecracker. I automatically assumed my brother slid a firecracker under the door as a prank, and I confronted him. He denied it and then told me that he heard the same thing one day upstairs, but he was on the first floor in the living room. When he heard it, he thought it was me being younger, got into his gun cabinet. He ran upstairs so fast to find his rifle safe and secured in his cabinet. I truly think there was another suicide that we've not been able to research, but in a sense, witnessed secondhand. If this was the only experience I was exposed to while living there my first 17 years of life, I'd be a happy camper. My family and neighbours lived in an old cemetery, Binh Hung Hoa, Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Google it. It was odd to live with dead people around, but I couldn't complain. Sometimes at night, I saw ghosts in white blurry smoke, wandering, flying around their own graves, or dark black shadow in human shape, just sitting for hours and disappear. My grandma dreamed of a little girl, told her to repair her house which submerged in water. My grandma asked the little spirit, "Who are you? Where is your grave?" Little girl told my grandma her name and pointing out where her grave was. My grandma walked up and found the little grave indeed submerged because of rainy season in Vietnam. She died in 2003, born in 1998. Her father never visited her since her death. I'm a Buddhist, and I understand many of you are Christian, who don't really think there would be another life after we die. One occasion, my soul detached off my body when I was very sick. I saw my body just lying there and I was floating. It was really shocked to think, oh, am I dead? Is that me? I don't want to die. I could hear my relatives talking from another room. Many years living around the dead, and after I hear thousands of real ghost stories, I can give my personal conclusion. Maybe it's different for you. Majority of male spirits have black, dark smoke, shapeless or human shape. Majority of female spirits have white or blurry white, shapeless or human shape, usually long hair. Ghosts, spirits, demons don't walk. Likely they fly, float above the ground about a feet. People who commit suicide, they would very likely become demons. Please do not have a suicide. When you were born and your fate was to be died at old age, killing yourself earlier, your soul have to wait for years until the day you really die. Many people who suicide at a hotel room, their spirits are likely can't escape that room for a very long time. So their spirits turn into demons and keep haunting that room. Some living people unfortunately have the same frequency with spirits, like radio. They can see ghosts even if they don't want to. The demon will make some strange noise to notify you that's their place and get the fuck out if they fail to scare you, because you don't see them. Ghosts can move objects, but a demon could even whisper. Only the Christian priest would confront, threaten Christian spirits, ghosts, or demons. Christian demons will never listen to a Buddhist monk who tries to convince the demons not to scare living people. The holy water actually works with Christian demons. Ghosts burns them very badly. People who are burned to death, their souls will suffer the pain over and over even if they don't have physical body anymore. I know that because in Vietnam, some esper could summon the spirit to enter strange body. Some tricky questions from family spirit will verify spirit identity. Best ways to know is if your house is haunted, having some dead people hiding, or a dog keep barking to nowhere, a young kid keep telling you about a stranger in the house, or your food decomposes very quickly. Yes, the dead people can eat, not as living people. An uncle who was my neighbourhood in cemetery, who was a communist, fought in the Vietnam War. In 1972, when he was in his 20s, he was shot and killed 2 American soldiers. He later felt sorry because he recognised that he murdered 2 people, but he said if he did not, then he'd be dead. He buried 2 bodies in an unknown site. After the war, he was so poor and had no choice but to come back to the old battlefield to start a new life. Got married. He'd often wake up early to chop trees, selling them for a living. Then he heard some whisper, "Hey," in English. He did not know English much, but could understand very basic. He looked around and saw nobody. He kept chopping the trees and heard, "Hello." It was still dark and silent. This time he saw 2 big shadows at the bamboo 5 meters away from him. He said that he thought was unreal, but this time he was so scared and ran away. He got back to that place in the morning and started seeing this place as so familiar. His memory came back to realize at the bamboo, he buried 2 American soldiers. He came back to tell his wife what he did in the war. He never told his wife he killed people. In his dream later, 2 American soldiers, 1 black and 1 white, begged him to send them back home. They somehow told him that they were not mad at him for murdering them. They understood it was war. Finally, he contacted the US Embassy in Saigon. They sent a team with him to recover the remainings. After the corpses returned to the USA, they came into his dream to say thank you while smiling. He said now he could get a good sleep. At least they are now home. When my mother was young, she was on a road trip with her brother and sister-in-law. She got car sick and they stopped in the middle of nowhere so she could get some fresh air. No houses, nothing, just woods and fields. So this man came up to her wearing a suit, a long black coat and a black top hat, and gave her a glass of water. She drank it while her brother and sister-in-law were cleaning the car, and turned to give the glass back, but the man was gone, nowhere to be found. Now skip some years to when my sister was critically in the hospital, all dosed on morphine, thinking her breathing tubes, don't know the word, were a new scarf. Telling my mom proudly about the scarf, she told us she got it from a man dressed in a long black coat with a top hat on. Skip some more years, and I was travelling myself, having to drive through some dark places with patches of wood. All of a sudden, I see this man standing ahead, and it just felt right to see him there, but he gave me the feeling that I should turn back and find another way, so I did. Next day, I found out a girl had been found dead in that exact region I was about to pass through. At one point, later on, my mom and I were looking through some old photo albums from my family. All people who weren't alive anymore, but my mom could name all of them. But then I saw a picture with the man standing on it. She had never noticed before, and she doesn't know who he is. Before I went back to work, following a few months off due to the pandemic, I was awake stupid late into the night. On this particular night, it was maybe 1 in the morning when I heard my cats fighting in the basement. It's kind of creepy down there in the way basements are, but I went down anyways and broke it up. Then I headed back upstairs. For context, these stairs are the type that have no backing, so someone could easily be under them for reach through to grab you, hence why I hate going through there. Anyways, my orange tabby was following up the stairs when just that seemed to happen. It was like her back paw was grabbed and dragged between the stairs so she clutched on and struggled to get away. I snapped. I rushed down there, picking her up as I did. It felt like I had to pull her away from something. I was spitting mad and told whatever it was in my house that this was unacceptable. This is my home. I will not tolerate anything doing something like that to my cats. That whatever was in my house was not welcome in my home and had to get out. During my little tirade, my 2 other cats quickly ran up the stairs as I held my orange tabby, who clung to me for dear life. When I went to go back up the stairs, the basement door was halfway closed and slowly moving still. I ignored it, stormed up the stairs, out the basement, and turned out the lights. There hasn't been any activity since then, and that was almost a year ago. I have only lived in 2 houses my whole life, but both have been haunted. To preface this, I want to say I am not influenced by scary movies since I avoid them like the plague. I'm a fraidy cat, always have been, so I don't need spooky movies making me terrified. I'll start with the house I lived in from the time I was born until I was 19. This house had 3 bedrooms, a super creepy basement, and just always seemed dark. The experiences start with my brother, who is 4 years older than me. As a child, he would often see a soldier marching towards him wherever he was on the property. It terrified him for a long time before my very religious dad did something and that particular activity stopped. Though this did not stop my brother from having horrible night terrors for a long time. He would scream and cry but couldn't be woken up. Skipping ahead to my own experiences, I will start with the most frequent one. I shared a room with my sister until I was 12, she was 14. Naturally, we didn't get along great, but we respected each other's space. She made me sleep in the bed by our door, so I looked out into the hallway. We always kept our door mostly closed at night, but with a crack open to let our cat into sleep wherever she wanted. I never told my sister because I didn't want to scare her, but like clockwork from the time I was 8, I would wake up in the middle of the night and see a man looking into our bedroom at me. He always stayed half hidden behind our door, but would just stand there staring. I tried to explain it away as my dad checking in on us, but since we shared a vent with my parents' rooms, I could easily hear him snoring while the man watched us. Time passed, and after my parents divorced, I didn't notice this activity again. I pretty much pushed it to the back of my mind when at 16, my sister's boyfriend at the time spent the night in our creepy basements. There was a bedroom down there, though no door on it since it was rarely used. He'd ended up staying late at our house, so was off to that room to sleep in. The next morning, he seemed disturbed, so I asked him what was wrong, and he kinda tried shrugging it off and saying it was nothing. I insisted he tell me, and when he finally did, I was horrified. All night, there had been a man peeking at him from behind our water heater that sat in the far end of the basement across from the bedroom. I confided with him and my sister about what I'd seen for the years her and I shared a room, and we all agreed it was super creepy. A couple years later, my sister and brother told me that sometimes in the middle of the night, they'd wake up to me muttering, sitting up straight in bed. They tried to get me to stop, playing annoying older siblings while actually being freaked out since my eyes were always closed. Though apparently they never could make me stop or wake up. I would eventually snap my head in whatever direction they were in and, in their words, growl at them to get out. I've never been afraid of walking in the dark in any house other than that one. It's unnerving but not terrifying in any way, but turning off the lights and going up the very dark stairs to my room always felt a bit scarier. There was one night in particular that stands out. I'd walked down those dark stairs without a problem, but when it came to walk back up, I just went cold with dread. I was staring at the dark space of the landing and I just knew something was there. The house was old and of course there were spots that creaked when you stepped on them, but that landing never made phantom creaking noises unless someone was on it. So when I heard it creak as if someone was adjusting their weight, I turned on every light I could, not caring if I woke up my dad, and for the first time in 3 years, I prayed. What convinced me this event was paranormal in nature is that I've never been struck motionless with fear before. The stairs in particular unnerved me, but not so much that I felt in danger, just being near them. Besides that, lights have randomly come on, the most notable being the one on a dimmer switch. I couldn't put anything on my walls because it would always fall off, and things constantly went missing only to turn up right when I got annoyed when I couldn't find them. For the most part, the experiences in that house were more annoying, but they could suddenly take a sinister and terrifying turn at any given moment. That house seemed to bring you down, leave you depressed and angry. Whatever was in that house was all wrong. Onto my new house, I moved halfway across the country with my boyfriend, into a small 3-bedroom house. It's a comfy place, and one I instantly felt more comfortable in than my previous home. At first, nothing happened. Then one day, I was all alone in our bedroom when, plain as day, it looked like someone lifted my kitten and gently placed her on the bed next to me. At the time, he was in a corner against the wall. I was sitting up in that corner of the bed against the wall, reading, when I looked up and saw her back arched and her feet slightly above the mattress as she freaking glided over to me. It freaked me out. I couldn't rationalize this, so I just picked her up and went downstairs while my boyfriend was playing video games. One day when I was in my backyard, I saw a light left on in the small bedroom that had become my office. I knew I'd turned it off, and the door is always closed so my cats don't knock anything fragile over. I decided to go in and turn it off, leaving my boyfriend outside, only to walk upstairs and see the door wide open and the light now off. I closed the door, made sure it wouldn't happen again, then went back outside and didn't say anything. Suddenly, that particular door opening became a regular thing until one day I walked in there and decided to try asking it to stop. I just said, "Can you keep this door closed, please? It's so the cats don't break anything." After that, the door stopped turning up open. My boyfriend is in the army, so naturally he spends some time away from home. On one such night, I was sleeping when at about 2 in the morning I heard a smash. Now, this is the day I realised I am fearless when still sleepy. I grumbled down those stairs, pissed to be woken up, and peeked into my kitchen, angry at the cat for knocking things off the counter. I didn't see anything at first, but once I stepped into the kitchen, I stepped directly onto broken glass. Thankfully, I didn't cut myself, so I cleaned it up and went back to bed. It wasn't until the next morning that I realised, 1, the glass was in the centre of the kitchen, and 2, it was all piled into one place, every last shard, like it had already been swept into that space. I scoured the kitchen looking for any more glass and didn't find anything. The last bigger experience I had was when I fell asleep on the little futon in my office. I was relaxing in there and reading late one night and fell asleep, when suddenly I woke up. I wasn't scared, just felt like I was in the way or being annoying. Like after midnight, I should be in my own room. I had to wonder if maybe that room was claimed by whoever or whatever is in my house. Like they're okay if I use it, but when it's bedtime, I should just be in my own bed. I don't think the presence in this house is malicious. Rather, I find it very helpful at times. When my cats are getting into something they shouldn't be in, I've seen them get pushed away, like someone is using their front foot to get them away from whatever they shouldn't be messing with. They seem to help the cats too. I know the cats have gotten stuck in the bathroom, accidentally being closed in, and I'll hear a small knocking sound on whatever room I'm in until I let the cat out. This at first unsettled me, but now it's just very helpful and nice. Sometimes I also get a very strong feeling to check our door before bed, and every single time I get that feeling, it's unlocked. I like my doors locked at night, so this has been very helpful. I used to live in a neighbourhood that was a plantation. I never experienced anything until living there. I was driving home from work. It was 9 p.m. I saw an old lady standing near my house. She was wearing a long white gown. It looked super old. Her hair was long and white, down past her knees. I couldn't see her face. It was like there was a shadow over her face. I parked my car and got out. I said hello and was walking away. She was saying things, but it sounded like gibberish, and I started to walk with baby steps, like she was very fragile. I got to my door and said, "Are you okay?" She turned slowly towards me, looking at me, speaking gibberish. She went from walking very slowly to sprinting towards me, looking at me. What freaked me out was that when she was sprinting, it looked like she was running on air and not on ground. I screamed and went inside, locked my door, and called 911. They came and went searching for her, but they said they never found her, nor had any reports of a woman missing or doing anything. When they left, I saw her from my window walking away like baby steps, with her head down. I didn't sleep good that night. The next day, my dad was in the garage and said to have saw the same woman, but not her face. He ignored her and went into the backyard. And then he heard my 2-year-old nephew screaming because this old lady was laughing frantically at him. When my dad turned around, no one was there. We never talked about it, until a year ago when I brought it up with my mom. She looked shocked. She told me there were 2 times in the 80s where a woman like that suddenly appeared in front of her in public, telling her if she needs to tell anyone she can see her, a bad omen will happen, then disappeared when my mom blinked. I don't know if this is the exact same lady, but that was shit scary. I'm looking for some sort of explanation or feedback for this, because me and my girlfriend are both thoroughly freaked out, and she's adamant about what she saw, and I am as well. I've never seen her this scared before, and we've been together for 2 years now. Some history of the area before I get into the story, so it will maybe make more sense. In the early 60s to the late 80s in the area that I live in, a small town in southern Illinois, there was a local group of Christian conservatives that was very much a cult. A large mansion replicating Mount Vernon, as in George Washington's estate, was built in the centre of the property with cabins in the surrounding areas and an airstrip also on the property. Nowadays, the mansion and everything else is full of old junk and has been long forgotten, and the man who built and was head over everyone is gone as well. If you want more info on the mansion and the history of the property, I can link it in the comments, but for now, I'm just going to get into what happened. So my girlfriend and I have explored the property a handful of times, and I have with another close friend as well. This will matter later. Today, it was a nice breezy day, and we decided we were going to go exploring this evening, so we hit a couple spots and saved the mansion for last. When we arrived, we go through the mansion and had some of the property as usual, but we decided to head towards an area that is much more difficult to reach on the property that we have never experienced before. Me and my close friend have been towards this area, but we didn't go any further because he didn't want to and obviously was unsettled, but he wouldn't tell me why. We got as close as I did with my friend, and I point out a clearing in some trees that has a fairly dry rock creek bed that we could cut through. The only thing that I noticed that seemed off was that the water appeared very, very dark and cold for how sunny it was outside. This occurred around 6 or 7 p.m. on a sunny evening in Illinois. It's still practically daylight outside. My girlfriend stares at this creek bed for a while and begins acting uneasy and quite afraid, telling me that we need to leave. I shrug it off and tell her we can just keep walking to where we plan to go, and that she's just being paranoid and jumpy. She's still visibly shaken as we keep walking, insisting that we need to leave and that we shouldn't be there. As we are walking, we hear things from the area on the property we were heading towards banging and crashing. We beat feet back to my truck, and she tells me she saw a large gathering of men in blue forms gathered down in the creek looking away from us, as if they were watching something very intently. She said that there was a lot of them and it gave her a very bad feeling watching them, as if there was something we were not supposed to be seeing. Looking through the clearing, I'm not going to lie, I felt uneasy, and she refused to look again on the walk back. Anyone have any idea what could have happened here, or any explanation at all? It was 2008 and I was a freshman in college. My BFF, let's call her Kay, is 1 year younger than me, and we're still in high school. Most of Kay's friends were in my grade, so when we all graduated, she was left behind to finish high school pretty much as a loner. One day, I got a random message from Kay that said, "Hey, how's your mom?" I thought this was an odd question considering my mom was a homeless drug addict, and I wasn't exactly in touch with her, and Kay knew this. I asked her why she was asking, and she proceeded to tell me that because she was so lonely and bored, she started playing with a Ouija board, first with a friend and then by herself. The ghost she was talking to claimed to be a teen boy named Caleb. Anyway, she was playing with the board as usual when suddenly it spelled out my entire name, then my mom's entire name. I didn't even know my mom's middle name, but Kay did. Then the board spelled drugs. Kay asked the board if my mom was okay, and the board started going crazy, spelling out mama, mama, and she got really freaked out and stopped playing, then messaged me. I immediately called my mom's dad, who was a reverend and retired pastor, and he prayed over the situation, which made me feel better. Kay stopped playing the Ouija board, and shortly after, a lot of negative things started happening to her. There was a bad car accident in front of the house she had the board at. She was driving and our friend was airlifted, but survived. Kay failed a few classes and didn't get into college. Then she started drinking heavily and became homeless for a few years. She would see images of the devil everywhere. The corner of the room, in dreams, and even in cartoons. She was in a dark place for a while, but things are finally going better for her. I didn't talk to my mom for 10 years. Then a few years ago we reconnected, and she told me about all the times she would try to get better, try and come visit, but something would always go wrong. She told me it felt like something evil had control over her life. She's doing better, and we talk now. Two years ago, almost to the day, my girlfriend and I were on vacation through New England. We stayed in a beautiful Airbnb in Craftsbury, Vermont for a few nights. The house was quite old. I'm unsure of the date it was built in, but it definitely started with 18 something. We turned in early for our first night there as we'd done quite a bit of driving that day. I woke up in the middle of the night needing to pee. Being that this place was in the country, and I myself was raised in the country, I often pee outside. Particularly on a night like this, where the weather is nice and the landscape beautifully illuminated by a nearly full moon. I'm in the backyard doing my business, when I notice a woman standing by an outbuilding. Her features are heavily shadowed despite it being such a clear and bright night. What wasn't shadowed was her long white gown billowing in the night breeze. It stood out so much, contrasted against her dark features, that it almost appeared to glow. I rubbed my eyes, half expecting her to be a figment of my imagination, but she was not. She just stood there motionless, other than her gown. I called out to her, "Hello?" I was not met with a response. At this point, I'm absolutely terrified, goosebumps, hair standing up, etc. I once again called out and asked, "Can I help you?" Nothing. After what felt like an eternity of staring at her, waiting for her to speak or move, even vanish into thin air, I retreated back inside and smuggled up next to my girlfriend, like a child who just had a bad dream. I stayed up for hours contemplating what I saw and somehow found sleep eventually. The next day, I opted not to tell my girlfriend what I saw. I know she would not have ridiculed me, but I still felt somewhat embarrassed to speak up. Was it all a dream? I must have convinced myself it was because I never spoke of it for the rest of the trip or for nearly 2 years after the fact. Recently, my girlfriend and I were watching a paranormal TV show. Again, we are not intrigued, not necessarily avid believers. We got on the topic of ghostly encounters, and I finally began telling her about the experience I just described. As I told the story, her expression changed to a look of dread. She interrupted me before I could finish. She had seen her as well. The second night in the house, she had awoken in the middle of the night, feeling like she was being watched. She sat up in bed, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was the same shadow-faced woman in the white gown. She explained she tried to wake me, but admittedly, I had gotten pretty drunk that night, because I knew it was the only way I was going to sleep with the previous night's events on my mind. I murmured incoherently, but never woke despite her best efforts. When she looked up from trying to wake me up, the woman was gone. She, like me, chalked the whole experience up to a dream, until I brought it up recently.